Well, good afternoon, DEC members and guests. I'm Steve Gregorian, President and CEO of the Detroit Economic Club, coming to you from lovely downtown Detroit, and it's a pleasure to have you with us. A couple of quick announcements before we get started. I do want to take a brief moment, as always, to thank the terrific DEC sponsors for their continued support of our mission. And on a programming note, the month of April at DEC, we've got something for everybody. So be sure to get your tickets for some upcoming events. We're going to kick off things in April with another session of our new Money Talk series, and that's April 6th, where we'll get some investing insights from our guest speaker. And on March 8th, Sunil Gupta has a new book called Backable: The Surprising Truth Behind What Makes People Take a Chance on You. And on April 20th, we'll host former General Electric CEO Jeff Immelt on his new book, Hot Seat. So get your tickets, and we hope you can join us. For today, we do want your video on and your mics off because we want to see your smiling faces. We're going to have some fun. And finally, we'll share email addresses with everybody on today's Zoom. If you wish to opt out, just send us a private message in the chat box. Today, though, we've got a really special treat for you, college basketball fans. So let's get started. Joe Lunardi has been projecting the NCAA Tournament field, also known as March Madness, for ESPN.com since the site's inception. Joe correctly picked 67 of this year's field of 68. That was announced on Selection Sunday, and you know we're going to ask him what the heck happened on number 68. But he did, however, accurately predict last week's Oral Roberts upset of Ohio State, and that was very impressive. Joe spent over 30 years at his alma mater, St. Joe's University, in a variety of roles. He's the author of a new book, Bracketology: March Madness, College Basketball, and the Creation of a National Obsession. I'm holding that for you here, and throughout today's program, we're going to share the Amazon link so you can purchase the book. And at the end of today's program, we're going to have some fun. 3 of you will be randomly selected, and the DEC is going to send you the Bracketology book. I'll interview Joe about the book for a few minutes, and in the final 10, we want to give you the opportunity to ask Joe a live question. So if you have a question, use the chat box to tell me you've got a question. You don't have to type the question in, just tell me you've got a question, and I'll call on you live. So we're so lucky Joe Lunardi could join us today from Philadelphia. In the middle of his hectic month of March. Let's say hello and give a warm welcome to Joe Lunardi. Welcome to Detroit, Joe.
Steve, everyone, thank you. I got to tell you, a lot of people don't understand that this is like the best week of the year for me because I'm pretty much done. And that feels really good. I'm sure you've all had the experience of, having a crunch time with your job or your whatever your various enterprises are. And as exciting as this all is, that big exhale at the end feels pretty good. And all I'm waiting for now is the weather to warm up enough for me to get out and play some bad golf, because I know there's an ice cream truck or a swimming pool somewhere that deserves to be hit. And I am just the guy for it.
That sounds awesome. Thanks for your hard work. And before we get into the book, there's something I got to ask. You are the guy responsible for common terms we use like bracket buster, body of work, last 4 in, bubble teams. And now, Joe Lunardi, you've even got your own bobblehead. Tell us how it feels to have your own bobblehead.
Here we go. Well, here's the deal with the bobblehead. And, these will be on sale in the lobby. So for the teams that were on the bubble this year, instead of looking at data, it was like the magic 8 ball. I would say, like, is Louisville in? And he would shake his head no. And I'd say, like, is Michigan State going to make it and keep that streak going? He would shake his head yes. And I find this to be as accurate, if not more so, than the committee itself. So thanks for bringing it up.
So scientific. Thank you. All right, let's get into your book. I read it cover to cover. It's really informative. It's very entertaining. And folks, it's a great read and a great gift for that college hoops fan in your life. But Joe, you lift the curtain on the NCAA Tournament Selection Committee. You compare great teams from different eras. You talk to the biggest name in college basketball, and you look ahead to the future of the sport. And let's start. You've got a chapter called The Birth of Bracketology. You write, bracketology was an accident, and it started in 1994 with a meeting you had in Knoxville, Tennessee. And then on January 7th, 2002, bracketology becomes a thing. So take us back to Knoxville, 94, and then tell us what happened on January 7th, 2002.
All right, well, you're really testing the old memory here. And I see a buddy holding up his Sister Jean bobblehead. Okay, OJ. Number one, don't you have enough to do? And two, like I learned a long time ago, never to mess with the Lord in March. And like, I don't know how these predictive models factor in, a team chaplain who can mysteriously get the best player on the other team to test positive for COVID and not play the game. Like, it's hard enough 5-on-5, right? But 5-on-8 with the officials, and then 5-on about 8 million with the Lord. Like, that's anyhow. So short answer, short version to a long tail. I always had a day job at St. Joe's on the side doing some college basketball. And my primary focus was something called the Blue Ribbon College Basketball Yearbook, which still exists. And it was considered in its day, and still for many, the Bible of the preseason publications. It wasn't slick with magazines. We couldn't afford color printing or any of that. We were just like the phone book of, like, if you wanted to read about, Montana, you might get a paragraph in one of the magazines, but you get a couple pages, a couple thousand words from us. And the brainstorm, if you will, was to add an 80-page postseason book to the preseason product. I had this idea in the 90s. My partners were Chris Wallace, who at that time and still is with the Memphis Grizzlies of the NBA. He's now the general manager. And Chris Dortch out of Chattanooga, who runs Blue Ribbon to this day. And we decided to meet at a Tennessee-Florida game. And I flew down and said, look, I think we can pull this off. And I think that it will broaden the audience for Blue Ribbon. Like, we were working in a vertical, to use today's terminology. Like, we had some hardcore preseason people, and we were selling the same 10,000 books to the same 10,000 people for, it seemed, 10,000 years. And I'm like, but where is the audience? The audience is in March, right, for the postseason. So, like, I may not be very good at the business of business, but it seemed that that's where the audience was. And I had to convince these two guys to take the printing risk, right? Because suppose we didn't sell any, I had to pay writers at conference tournaments all over the country so that Sunday night after the bids came out, we could go right to print. Because, like, Al Gore hadn't invented the internet yet. Like, we had to print like an actual book, like with paper and ink, and then shipping and get it to people in time so they could study up and do their brackets on Thursday noon. And the guy, we were pretty much equal partners at that point. They agreed to take a chance. I said to Dortch, you're in charge of, like, order taking and fulfillment, and I will hire the writers and the book. And get the book out on time. I got a printer in Philly. I got somebody who's going to work through the night, et cetera, typesetting. And the only and it was a huge editorial success. Like, the tournament started at 12:07 on Thursday, and there's Jim Nance at the anchor desk, and my book is next to him. And I'm thinking, this is not bad. And the same for ESPN studio coverage. The problem was we printed, wrote, typeset, and prepared like 100 teams, because we didn't know who was going to get in. So the overhead killed us. And, again, St. Joe guy, not maybe the sharpest, but, like, let's close the gap a bit and let's try to get. So that's how I started studying the why and the how of the field, to shrink the number of teams we had to do. So when people ask, it was essentially laziness and greed. We wanted to do less work and make more money, like every other enterprise in the history of the human race.
What happened on 2002? January 7th, 2002, bracketology begins.
So the projections kind of had started to find their way onto ESPN's fledgling website. And by 02, someone at ESPN.com decided to give it like what we will call blowout treatment. Like it got its own page and they put my picture up and team logos and click here and you can see Michigan's resume with a comment from Lunardi, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that night it went live the Monday after, like whenever football season ended, with the intent of doing it every Monday the rest of the cycle. And it got like 250,000 hits in 45 minutes or some ridiculous number. And we looked at each other and went, holy, you know what, maybe we've got something here. And at that day, at that very moment, I should have signed a piece of paper that said for the next 20 years, I would get paid by the click. But I'm not that smart. And it worked out pretty well anyway.
That's awesome. By the way, we invited OJ on the call because we need lots of Armenians on this. So that's why he's with us. So chapter 4, more than
anyway, he doesn't know. I thought I knew a lot of people.
He's great. Chapter 4, more than a hobby. Let's talk about a day in the life of Joe Lunardi, both in season and off season. So in season, you describe yourself in the book in the period between Super Bowl Sunday and Selection Sunday as you're a walking, talking ranking machine. So take us inside your in-season world for just a minute.
It's actually pretty good writing there. That must have been David's part of the book. Yeah, I mean, from the first day of the season until the last, or the last of the conference tournaments anyway, I update a 1 to 68 list. Now, I'm not suggesting that this is a healthy lifestyle choice for like a normal person, okay? But I have found it to be a pretty good way to do the job well. And what makes me a little bit different than, you know, the legions of others who are now doing this, and I think it's cool that they do. I'm not like, it's great. Have at it, have fun. What makes me a little different, other, of course, you know, than my good looks and rapier wit, is that like the other guys doing it aren't on call 24/7 to the primary network in the sport, right? Like maybe not so much in November and December, but from January on, if there's a studio host, a play-by-play guy, a producer, production truck outside an arena, a halftime fill show, between game, pregame, postgame, whatever, that wants to know, like, hey, who are the 1 seeds? Who's on the bubble? How is this, that, or the other conference stacking up? Like, they kind of want an accurate answer. They're funny that way. They don't, you know, want me to make it up. And I don't know another way to do it. Like, I guess there's a half-ass way to do it. Pardon my French, but like I'm not wired that way. And I believe that the most accurate way to do it is to have a 1 to 68 every day of the season. And in a way, it prepares me for the onslaught that comes later, right? Because like I may be in an age where my wife, the psychologist, is telling me that brain cells are rapidly dying off. And that may be true, but I'm able to remember on February 20th what, you know, Iowa did on November 20th. And if asked a question about Iowa, to kind of have it at my fingertips. And that what a day in the life is like for me at the end of the cycle is literally updating that 1 to 68 plus whatever the bubble is in real time. So that when they start in March running it across the bottom of the screen, or every time you tune in a game, it could be, I don't know, Mississippi State against Arkansas on a Tuesday on ESPNU at 8:30. I'm just picking out of the air.
Yeah.
They're going to put up a graphic that says where those teams are. And it's almost obscene the amount of references to bracketology and to me. Like one time my daughter was in college years ago and called me after midnight, which is when kids from college, tend to do that, we've discovered. Like, Dad, they changed your name on TV. And I'm like, what? She said, yeah, it's according to, because that's what runs like nonstop for a month, according to, like, it's almost embarrassing. But I also take that seriously. Like, every person watching whatever that game or show is deserves the best information that I can produce. So that's what I do.
That's really cool. Well, I'm going to call you according to for the next question. So according to, you've got a chapter where you talk in great detail about the formula for picking teams, and you write bracketology is an art and a science, and then there's a human element and a data element. So tell us about that chapter.
Well, the data part, while incredibly time consuming, is we're able to replicate, like, exactly, in fact, because most of, if not all of the metrics now used by the committee members are in the public domain. And I also have my own secret sauce of aggregating them, depending on what I think the committee is going to deem important in a given week or month or year. And, that is my secret sauce, if you will. And the people who ask, well, what is the formula? The real answer is there's never one. Like, I might wake up on March 6th and say, I just have a hunch that they're going to lean a little bit more toward, I don't know, road record. So I'll spin the dials a little bit more in that column, right? And that changes whenever the mood strikes me. Or whenever I read a comment in the paper from a committee member, or, and then at some point near the end, I stop reading because it throws me off task. But that's the science part. And it's very time consuming, but, like, not to sound there, like, I have that down. Like, there are a lot of people doing this. I got it. On the art part, I think is just understanding that there are 10 human beings and not 10 computers in the room, right? And they're all bringing their different viewpoints to the task. And so I'm not picking and ranking according to my opinion. I'm picking and ranking and applying their past practices to this year's set of results. And I think that's the art part that can really only come about from the experience of doing this for so long. Like the more I do it, I'm not declining in my performance like a baseball hitter as I age. Like, maybe I'm getting dumber and covering it somehow, but, like, I'm getting better because there's just more experience. And I also think that they're getting better because their feet have been held to the fire by knuckleheads like me going on TV and saying they should have done this or they should have done that. Because nobody wants to get yelled at. Like, they want to hear nice things said about them because they're human too.
Yeah, thank you. And I think they did a good job this year.
Agreed.
One last chapter I want to talk about in your book, and then we'll get into some other questions. And I thought this was really an interesting chapter. And it's chapter 10, My Crystal Ball. Mm-hmm. And in this chapter, you present a bunch of ideas about the future of college basketball. And one of those in particular struck me, and that was, you write that the financial gap between the Power 5 conferences and the smaller ones will bring an end to Cinderella, and her clock will strike midnight permanently. Tell us why.
Well, hopefully not in any of our lifetimes, but I mean, let's understand something here. The big boy schools, like the N in NCAA for them does not stand for nonprofit. Okay. And I'm not criticizing that. Like, they make an enormous investment in facilities, salaries, infrastructure, everything to do with big time college sports. And they are entitled to seek some return on that investment. Like, I get it. But the only thing that those power leagues want more than to take up, let's say, 30 or 32 of the at-large bids is to have all of them. Right? Like, this is Gordon Gecko disguised as, I don't know, 80 Power 5 ADs. Okay? And they think they're already doing the world a favor by letting all the smaller leagues have an automatic bid. Right? Like, isn't it nice that we let you come to dinner and sit at the kids' table? Right? That's the way it is. Again, I'm not criticizing, judging, it just is. And they are continuing to make the stakes of the game higher by passing rules that make participation more expensive, whether it's cost of attendance for scholarship athletes, whether it's building the $25 million practice gym when you already have 17 other suitable places on campus to practice. It's paying a coach $7 million when like 5 would do. Like, you name it, that's just the deal. And these are the guys from your neighborhood poker game that push all their chips to the center of the table with the big puffy cigar and give you the finger. Right? They might not be bad guys. They're just playing a different game. Right? And I believe that someday they're going to have their own tournament. And that I hope it comes after I'm done doing this. But that's where the trend line is going.
Yeah.
And there are way more people, including at least one on this call, who could speak to it much more detail than I have it. But I don't mean to sound like that guy at the end of the block that nobody likes, but like, I know I'm right about this because I can do little pie charts of the number of bids that go to certain leagues over a period of time. And our piece of pumpkin pie from Thanksgiving at the kids' table is a lot smaller than the slice they're getting at the grown-ups table. It just is.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Well, folks, you can find more really interesting thoughts about the future of the sport. Joe's thoughts about the future. Again, here's the book, and you'll see the Amazon link in the chat. Before we get on to audience questions, Joe, you were kind enough. Can you break down the Sweet 16 for us in a couple minutes with particular emphasis on these guys?
Yeah. Well, and I'll just say, like, if we need to go a couple extra minutes to get to people's questions, I'm more than happy to do that. I know you have other business, but like, really, the last thing I want to do is vacuum the kids' bedrooms. So, like, let's just talk a little bit of basketball. I'll pay for it later, but so what? Look, it's been a phenomenal tournament, made even more so by the fact that we were all longing for it so much, and then throw in all the upsets, or at least I would say the number of extraordinary upsets. They're almost all, like, to me, the upset is when there aren't upsets, right? Because, well, just because that's it's our best championship because it's the most unpredictable. Like, if Duke and Kentucky won every year, we'd get sick of it. I guess unless we're Duke or Kentucky fans. So Sweet 16, in no particular order. I have all 4 teams still alive in Gonzaga's region, including USC and Oregon. They're all I could see both USC and Oregon giving Gonzaga a real game in the Elite Eight. I don't think Creighton is going to be able to stay with them. Like, Gonzaga is different. Like, they are legitimately and analytically, in the science part of this, like, they're a good bit better than everyone else. Like, about 6 or 7 points on a neutral court by analytics. And that is like a huge number. Doesn't mean they're going to win, because 6-point underdogs win in college basketball all the time. It just means in a best of 7 series, they would certainly win. I think. Coming down, Michigan's region, I have them 3 of the 4. I don't have who's Alabama playing? UCLA. I don't have UCLA. I don't know about livers. So I picked them to lose to Florida State. I hope I'm wrong for obvious reasons.
So do I.
Anybody who knows me knows that, I'm tight with Phil Martelli. I did the St. Joe stuff with him for 30 years. And what Juwan Howard has had to overcome with him right next to him on his bench, I don't think can be quantified. So no wonder why Juwan was National Coach of the Year. But look, when they're on, they're right there with Gonzaga and Baylor. We saw it all year long. But I can't imagine he's going to play. And if he does, I can't imagine he's going to be very effective.
I would agree.
A stress fracture in your foot, like feet are pretty important in basketball. All right, other side. I think Baylor has maybe an even easier path to the Final Four than Gonzaga, because I don't think any of the teams that they could play are as good as USC and Oregon. Arkansas, the 3 is still alive, but they're just way better defensively than Arkansas. And Oral Roberts, great story. I think it's midnight, and as much as I'm a Philly guy, like Villanova's out kicking its coverage right now with their most important player injured. And, they did get to play a 12 and a 13 to get this far. Now, I've been wrong before betting against or picking against Villanova. But, if Baylor and Villanova played best of 7 on a neutral court, Baylor would win in 5, maybe 4. So I'm taking Baylor there, and I'm pretty comfortable with that. Now, in the region of Nutty, down lower right, we have the number 2 seed Houston from OJ's league, who somehow is not getting talked about at all in this region. And I'm not really sure why that is, because all they do is win 30 games a year and get top 4 seeds. Everyone else seems to be picking Loyola or Syracuse. Now, close followers of me know that Syracuse is my kryptonite. And even when I'm right about them, I'm wrong. And I know that he's up there smirking at me and, was quoted in the paper, Boeheim, saying, I was never worried our bid because Lunardi said we were safely in, which to a normal person would sound like a compliment. But to those of us who know him, we know that that's a poke, right? And I'm going to hear about it at some golf tournament this summer. But Houston is better than Syracuse. Okay? They're better than Syracuse. I don't think they're this much, but they're better than Syracuse. Now, I don't know what to do about the God factor. I did a segment that many probably saw with Sister Jean last week.
I saw that.
Sister genealogy and bracketology, and the off-air stuff that didn't make it. We would argue about a game, and she'd be like, well, Joseph, if you'd been around as long as you would never pick so and so and so and so. And for me, it's 37 years of Catholic school down the drain. It's staggering how sharp she is. And I tried to say, sister, but 3 years ago, you were a 98-year-old rookie. Now you're a grizzled veteran at 101. And there was no way in hell she wasn't convincing the NCAA to let her go. Are you going to who's going to call her up and say you can't come? Seriously. So, is Loyola better than an 8? Yes. If they play in the final against Houston, it might be first team to 50 wins, because that's a rock fight. And maybe the altar boy in me is saying I have to take Loyola, but Like if Loyola makes a second Final Four in 4 years, it will be one of the most extraordinary achievements in the history of the sport.
But that's what makes it great. That's why.
Yes, exactly.
Exactly. So thank you. I want to, in our remaining moments, turn over to the DEC members. And you mentioned Syracuse. Matt Friedman, turn your video on because I know you're going to give Joe some grief about Syracuse. This is Mr. Syracuse right here. This is Matt.
Yeah, I couldn't tell from the shirt. It was hard to figure.
Are you there, Matt?
I saw it before. Maybe when I picked Houston, he'd logged off.
How about Adam Burgess, Mr. Michigan State? Can you unmute, Adam?
How you doing?
Great.
Thanks for supporting the DEC and being a part of us. We're excited to have you.
My pleasure.
I'm just wondering your take on the Big Ten and the big drop off of last weekend. Did they beat each other up too much during the regular season, or were they frauds?
I think it's bad luck and small sample size, to be perfectly candid. Like, were they maybe a little overvalued? Yes. But, I mean, the 9th of their teams that got in beat 2 number 1 seeds and a number 2 seed. So, like, I just can't quibble. What happens in a single shot 40-minute game is really close to random at this stage of things. And that's why we have Oral Roberts and Abilene Christian and, yeah, I don't know, every other double-digit seed that's still alive. And if you look at it in with a longer lens, I mean, the Pac-12 is rightfully putting its chest out with 4 Sweet 16 teams. But, like, the Pac-12 got a third of its teams in the tournament. The Big 12 got 70% of its teams in the tournament. The Big 10 got 65% of its teams in the tournament. And it's not a one-year phenomenon. Like, for a decade, the Pac-12 has gotten a third or less of its teams in the tournament. Like, so you want to go out on the limb that says the Pac-12 has become the top conference in college basketball? Yeah, I'm not going there. I'm not going there. And I think that athletic directors and college leaders who make coaching and hiring and firing and program evaluation decisions based on 4 days instead of 4 months are just dumb. And they pay for it all the time. It happens every year. Like the coach of, I don't know, Oral Roberts is going to go somewhere. And look, he's a really good guy. But they had a good day. And Ohio State didn't.
Yeah. Thanks, Adam. Thanks, Joe. Matt, are you back? Because I know you want to give some Syracuse love. Let's go to Alger LaHood. You've got a good question. In fact, Joe, you write about it in the book. Alger, you want to unmute and ask?
Yeah, Joe, it really, you look at the mid-majors, and it seems they always get the short shift. You know, these are, when you have a team of players, it's all or something, they always get the short shift. Should the tournament be expanded, or how can we get more of these second-tier schools into the tournament? And you have to understand something, Joe. I'm a U of D Mercy graduate who's been to 2 NCAA tournaments in 30 years, I think.
Thanks, Adam.
But they won it. Didn't they beat St. John's like as a 13 or a 12 one time?
Yes, they did. And they almost beat Michigan in 78 or 79. They lost with at the buzzer. And when it was only a much smaller tournament.
Yeah, they beat Michigan State once in the tournament with Vitale.
Right.
He's only mentioned that,
50 times. 70 or
80 times. It was like Digger in the old days. I beat 7 number 1 seeds or number 1 ranked teams. I'm like, but you played 37 of them. Look, not on Selection Sunday when I hope I'm as neutral as it comes and in the run up to Selection Sunday. But I have a bias too on this topic, and it's supported by fact. Okay. The non-power conference schools aren't seemingly getting the short end of the stick. They are demonstrably and provably, if that's a word, getting the short end of the stick. I have the data. Okay. If you want to do a 15-year study, as I did during the pandemic, because I'm a little nutty, okay, we want to compare, let's say, the double-digit seeds, 10, 11, 12, which is where this is kind of like the sweet spot, or for the mid-majors, the unsweet spot. And I don't even like the term, but at least for the Atlantic 10, the American, like that next 1A tier that send multiple teams every year, there's nothing mid about them. Like, they're still buying games for big numbers. When they stop doing that, we can call them mid. But in those years, if you compare the high-end mid-majors that are in that seed range, 10, 11, 12, versus what I call the middling majors, the ones that are around 500 in their league, or in some cases worse, the following three things are provably true. One, they get fewer bids. Two, they get worse seeds. And three, they win 50% more games anyway in the tournament. And do you know why that is? Because they're better at basketball. In those single instances, the 25-5 Drake Bulldogs are better at basketball in this place and time than the 15-13 Duke Blue Devils. Now, maybe that's not the right comparison, but every year there are cases to be made like that. And while the committee rightfully can't use the past to inform a decision about a specific team, it should be able to study a pattern and say, when we take teams that are essentially 500, we're taking teams that aren't very good. I don't care if you're in the NBA Pacific Division. If you're 7-11 in your league, you haven't earned the right to play for a national championship. I am willing to die on that hill, and I suspect that someday I will insult the wrong person in the hierarchy and may actually die on that hill. But I have the data, and it's incontrovertible. Like, they need a rule that protects them from themselves so that at some level, there's a minimum for tournament eligibility to let a couple, three more teams in the field after that you're talking about. Not because it's charity, but because it's the right basketball decision.
Thanks, Joe. You got time for one last question?
Sure.
Mike Swales from NBS Commercial Interiors. Still with us?
He's vacuuming the kid's bedroom.
Well, you don't have to do it now. That's good. How about Michael Hinkson, New York City? You with us? Let me ask Mike Swales' question. Why so many upsets so far?
Because the NCAA tournament is a 40-minute sample of 70 possessions played by overgrown teenagers. And the NBA, an NBA playoff series, if it goes 7 games, is 700 possessions played by men, right? In any sector, if we have 70 inputs versus 700 inputs, we're going to get way more variance from the 70. And this is from a guy who got a C+ in econ stat in college. But like, I can count, you can all count, right? Now, has it been a little more variant this year than most? Yes, but look at all the other extenuating circumstances. Like, I think it's great theater. You know, unless it's your school, it's the best thing in the world. And you know, for the Oral Robertses and the Summit League to get an extra unit of revenue is transformative for them. Like, no offense to the Big Ten, but like they got plenty of units, so they got to cut back a little bit on the paper clips order. They'll get by.
I read in the book, but I want you to share real quick, the dollar amounts that you're talking about for teams that get in is astounding.
Yeah, it's about 1.7 million. Plus another same size chunk whenever they advance. So think about it. Now they're sharing it with their conference.
Right.
They're each, and every conference has a different way of cutting up the pie. But like, if you're Villanova and you go to win 2 national championships in 3 years, and you want to, maybe put an extra hot tub in the locker room, you don't have to finance it.
Okay, I lied. One last question. Tom Wiggins, you still with us?
Yeah, I am, Steve. How you doing?
Good. Nice to see you. You've got an interesting question. I don't
Yeah.
know if Joe can keep it to a minute or two, but give it a rip.
Great. Hey, Joe. Thanks
Tom?
a lot. You're awesome. I listen to you all day, buddy. Good stuff. What
Could you
about?
tell my wife that?
Sure. Get you out
Or
of
my
vacuuming in
kids?
the bedroom. Yeah.
No, I mean, just listen.
Oh, let's sure.
Yeah.
I think college players being paid. Actually, I think when the tournament started, there were a couple teams. I think Michigan might have been one of them that was kind of pushing for, hey, we need to get paid. What are your thoughts on that and how it might change the tournament going forward?
Well, it's out of balance, but I don't consider myself enough of an expert on the subject to give like as passionate an opinion as I might about what they should do with bubble teams. Like on the list of experts on planet Earth about bubble teams, I'm probably on it. on this list, I just have an opinion, and that is, I think the guys who have legitimate earning power, like Zion or LeBron in his day or Kobe before that, just let them go. Let them go. And like, just let them go and let them go earn it. Like, why give Zion 125,000 under the table when he can make 5 million legally? It just doesn't make sense to me. And the NBA's against it because they don't want to pay all the other prodigies who are going to be drafted and make them sit on the bench for, $3 million of glorified babysitter money. And I would say, well, that's on them for picking them. And the kids who put their names in and aren't good enough and don't get picked, well, that's on them. Now, maybe the NCAA could help by letting those kids go to school if they don't get picked. Maybe there is a middle ground. But like every other sector, not to mention every other sport, has figured this out. Like if I'm if I'm the next Chris Everett at 16 years old in Sarasota, Florida, I can go to Wimbledon. Like, why is it so hard? I don't get it. I'm sure there are people that know more. I just don't get it.
We could have a whole nother program just about that, but
Yeah.
thanks for the question, Tom. And folks, once again, there's your book, Bracketology. You can find the link in the chat room. And Joe, Pat's or Geno's cheesesteaks?
Well, I'm a Pat's Originals, but I'm actually a Tony Luke's guy. Like, it's like if you're from Buffalo, like the Anchor bars where they invented the wings, but everybody knows to go to Duff's if you live around there, right? And closing thoughts, let's go Michigan. And when am I getting my invite to the DEC golf outing? There's got to be one.
Well, we're going to do one, and you're going to be the Masters of Ceremonies and the honoree. So a huge thank you, Joe. You are so busy, but we really appreciate your time. Good luck with the book. It's a great read once again, and I encourage our members to get one for that college basketball fan. We wish you the best. Let us know if we can be helpful with anything here in Detroit. We hope we can do this again in the future, and it'd be great to do it in person. So we'll say goodbye to you before we give away.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much, Joe.